This passage is a research passage. It's passage 4. It's research because we see experiment 1 and experiment 2, so you're comparing those two experiments. For research passages in our DRC approach, we're going to read, but not carefully. We're just going to read lightly, skim the details, and look for the process and the differences between the studies. So it looks like the students are testing the adhesiveness of tape to paper and plastic. In experiment 1, they put tape on paper, and then they test how much force it takes to remove the tape from the paper. Different brands at different widths. Looks like they do different trials and get an average. Experiment 2, they do it in plastic wrapping, and the same thing, different brands, different width, and how much force it takes to remove the tape from the wrapping. Then go to the questions. Number 19, the results of the two experiments, so we're using both experiments, support the conclusion that for a given brand of tape, that means any of the brands will work except for choice Z in experiment 2 because we only tested one width, but they did test two widths in table 1, experiment 1. As the width increases, so the width, isn't it, as it increases, the force required to remove the tape, and we're going to look at the average column, does what? We see that it increases also, right? Our lines are going the same direction, down on all accounts. You could have just really compared one tape in one spot, but your answer is definitively A. Number 20, in experiment 2, had brand X tape in a 4 centimeter width. We have to add 4 centimeters in. This is hypothesis. We continued. Been tested. The force required to remove the tape from the plastic wrapping would have been closest to. So looking at force, we're going to look at the average column, and we see that to go from 1.6 to 3.2 and 3.2 to 5 increases by 1.6 and 1.8. So we're going to say 5 to whatever the next is, right? Going from 3 to 4 is going to increase it by about 2, which would make it 7G. Number 21, based on the average results of experiments 1 and 2, which brand adhered better to paper than plastic? Well, which table is paper and which is plastic? We have to go to the reading. We see experiment 1 is paper and experiment 2 is plastic. We're going to now look at the average column to see which one adheres better. Let's look at brand X first, and we see that in each case, brand X took more force to remove, so it adhered better to paper than to plastic, and that's what we're looking for, adhered better to paper. So we can eliminate choices B and D because they don't have brand X in them. We check choice Y, and we see it's equal in both cases, so we can eliminate choice C, and the answer has to be A. For number 22, we're using both experiments. Which brand of tape was or were used at only 2 different widths? So any of the brands, we're using the tape width column. We want only 2 different widths, so we can eliminate anything that has more than 2. And the only one left is going to be choice Y, or brand Y. So G is the correct answer. Number 23, for the students to determine the force required to remove the tape from the wrappings, we're testing that spot. That's what we want to know. Which of the following attractive forces had to exceed the adhesive force between the tape and the wrapping? So which force has to be greater than the force required to remove the tape from this wrapping? Let's look at our answer choices. When we see C and D, the force between earth and wrapping or earth and tape, and we're not testing gravity, so we know C and D are out. If we look here, right, the force between the clamp and the tape is what we have to exceed, right? If that breaks, we can't test the force required to remove the tape in the paper or the wrapping. So your answer has to be A. Question number 24, we're using experiments 1 and 2. The instructors gave the students a strip of paper that was 2.5 centimeters wide and said which brand would have produced a result at 4.9 newtons for paper and 4.1 for plastic. So let's just check each brand. We're going to start with tape brand X, and 2.5 will be right here between the two tested, so that needs to be 4.9, and that is in range. So brand X would work for paper. Let's check the same thing in plastic. And again, 4.9 would work. So we know brand X will work. So we can eliminate choice G and J because they don't have brand X as a choice. Now we need to check brand Y. And brand Y has 2.5, and we see that is not in the range. 4.9 and 4.1 does not work, so we can eliminate choice H, and our only remaining choice is F.